It's got to be real.
Be real. Be real. Okay guys, this is our pre-fight prediction video for this weekend's British world title fight between all British world title fight between Andy Lee and Billy Joe Saunders for the WBO middleweight world championship. Now this is a great fight, not only on paper but in terms of the logistics of the fight. You know, two travellers for the first time in history fighting for a world title, and all on British soil as well, so it's a win-win for us as British fans. You know, they're both southpaws, so for me personally that adds a lot more to the fight as well. You know, orthodox against orthodox is pretty standard, but there's always a little bit more, I don't know, excitement for me, a bit more flair when there's two southpaws facing off. Some people may say that doesn't make any sense, some might say it doesn't make a difference, but to me it does. On a personal level, I feel like the fight just automatically has a bit more, you know, unpredictability to it. We saw that similarly this year, back in May when James DeGale defeated Andre Durrell for the vacant IBF Super Middleweight Championship. It was two southpaws getting in the ring of the highest caliber, facing off for a very interesting and quality matchup with plenty of excitement. Knockdowns galore. Now this fight itself, what does it present for Billy Joe Saunders and Andy Lee? What does it do for the resume? What does it do for the legacy? Now, obviously Billy Joe Saunders is a guy who is coming off probably the biggest victory of his career last November, defeating Chris Eubank Jr. by split decision. He fought in July in a very, very brief warm-up fight, because this fight has obviously been postponed twice. For those people who don't know, this fight was supposed to take place back on the World War III card, featuring Terry Flanagan against Magdaleno, and also Liam Smith as well, fighting for the WBO world title as well. That card was packed full of WBO World Championship fights as well, but then this fight got postponed because Billy Joe Saunders sustained a cut above his eye, and prior to that it was supposed to take place in Thomond Stadium in Ireland, in a massive venue for all the Irish fans and travellers, but Andy Lee ended up getting a virus and that was also postponed as well. So there's two occasions this fight has been postponed, so the build-up kind of died down a bit and the anticipation died down, but now it's kind of picked up again. But I do feel that with, you know, the latest blitz of middleweight, you know, world title fights in terms of Golovkin, Lemieux, Canelo, Cotto, Jacobs, Quillin, and now this is kind of the least interesting out of the four in terms of it's not picked up any momentum, and especially with Frank Warren and Queensberry Promotions, they're struggling to sell out the Manchester Arena. And when you look at this fight on its own, it should be a sellout, and they've still got tickets going for £40 and this and that, you know, so it's quite disappointing in that sense. But for the die-hard boxing fan and the people who have Box Nation and just people who appreciate boxing in general, this is a fight for fans, you know, who love the sport basically. Stylistically, Billy Joe Saunders is the boxer going into this fight. Again, we saw this against Chris Eubank Jr. This guy can box, he can start off, he can set the pace very well. Once he's set into his pace, it is very hard to offset him. You have to take the fight to him, unsettle him, and be able to cut the ring off, because Billy Joe Saunders is very good at movement, and he can throw punches and bunches. I wouldn't say he's a volume puncher as such, but he can throw enough volume to keep you guessing, and you find it hard to get your shots off against him. Now, Andy Lee for me is a bit of a wild card in terms that his skill level, I wouldn't say he's world class, but he has one punch knockout power which has gotten through his career whenever he's needed it. Yes, he suffered losses to Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and Brian Vera, both knockout losses. Does that mean he had glass chin? Not necessarily, but he's suffered both times knockout losses when he's lost, and those are the only two losses on his resume at this point. Billy Joe Saunders can outbox him, I believe. I think Andy Lee has power, and I think he has certain intangibles, heart and the will to win. Otherwise he wouldn't have been able to do that to John Jackson, knock him out, and you know, come back against Matt Korobov, who was also losing against. This year he's had one sole fight back in April on Premier Boxing Champions against the highly rated, and up until recently the guy who people were saying was the #2 middleweight in the world, Peter Quillin. Bless me, sorry. Pardon me. Peter Quillin was knocked out viciously by Daniel Jacobs, so people are going to start to question, is Peter Quillin even that good? Who has he fought? Which is, you know, they're plausible questions. But Andy Lee fought to a draw in that fight. But at the same time, there's not many rounds that I actually gave Andy Lee, so I found it a very tough fight to accept as a draw. I felt like Peter Quillin did enough to win that fight. I'm not Andy Lee a hater, by the way. I'm all for the British guys, but Andy Lee, for me, he's not lazy. I just feel like he doesn't do enough when he's in there, and he's not necessarily, you know, an Anthony Joshua or someone of that caliber or thought process that they rely on the power shots and that's it, or a Eubank Jr. just wants to throw loads of power shots and try and get you out of there. Andy Lee is a guy who I think he thinks he can box better than he can. Again, no disrespect. Adam Booth is his coach. I don't know if he's the right coach for him in terms of Adam Booth likes to teach his fighters to get behind the jab and move and you know, control the range. Because if you can control a range in a fight, you can pretty much control the fight, full stop. But this is the situation that I found Billy Joe Saunders and Andy Lee in. Billy Joe Saunders, I think, by far is a much better boxer, and if he can set the pace in this fight, he will outbox Andy Lee. The key factor is, can Andy Lee land that shot? And we've seen it time and time again, he has landed it. But the question is, can he land it on someone like Billy Joe Saunders? I do think Saunders is world class. I think he's elite. The only issue is obviously when you look at the middleweight division, pardon me again, it's stacked with Canelo, Golovkin, Peter Quillin, Danny Jacobs. You know, these guys can, in my head, I can't envision, you know, a Jacobs versus Saunders or a, you know, Golovkin Saunders, because I can't see it in my head. But at the same time, we have to cast our minds back to Tyson Fury and Klitschko. No one imagined Klitschko and Fury in the ring, and when they happened, everyone was laughing. And then when the fight was all done and dusted, we had a new world champion in Tyson Fury. So it's a very similar circumstance to me, in the sense that we have someone who is, you know, of a higher caliber in terms of resume and opponents in Andy Lee, with, you know, 2 or 3 world title shots prior to becoming a world champion. You know, and he's a quality fighter. He's in the prime of his career, and he's at the right age. He's 31 years old, and he's a solid fighter all round. I just don't think he has the ability to cope with someone like Billy Joe Saunders for 12 rounds. I do believe the intangibles that he has, you know, he has the heart, he has the one-punch knockout power, and I do believe if he has Billy Joe cornered, it's going to be very difficult for Billy Joe to get out of it. However, Billy Joe, again, he's very similar. They're kind of made up of the same attribute in terms of not their skill, but their heart and will. They're fighting people, they're travellers, and they're all the same. You know, Tyson Fury has echoed this sentiment time and time again. We are fighting people. We would rather get knocked out than give up, you know. Saunders, I think, if Lee lands on him, he will be hurt, but he has a chin as well, and he'll figure out a way to get through. And he's always said, I'll find a way to win. I'm not saying he's Mayweather, nor am I saying he's the equivalent of that in Traveller, but Billy Joe Saunders, for me, when I look at all the boxes, Billy Joe Saunders ticks a lot more than Andy Lee. Like I said, you know, fights on paper, they're easy to say, oh, you know, I think this guy would win. But anything can happen on the night. Andy Lee couldn't land that one punch and knock him out. Billy Joe Saunders could outbox him and school him and, you know, just make him look like a fool for 12 rounds if he's on his A game. Now, Billy Joe Saunders has not fought a proper fight in over a year. I think prior to that, we hadn't seen the best Billy Joe for a while. You know, he was flat against John Ryder, against O'Sullivan, Spike O'Sullivan as well, and he fought once more as well. But it's out of my head right now. But the Eubank fight, I think it was a lot closer than people think. You know, Eubank didn't start until late on. Maybe he had issues with movement and didn't know what to do when he froze, and that's fine. There's no issue. You know, from my part, there's no issue with that. You know, Eubank was very, very inexperienced at that point. You know, him and Billy Joe Saunders, they're going to be tied together for you know, the rest of their careers. Now, there's always going to be a demand for a rematch or a rematch and a rematch again and all sorts, because they have the styles that mesh and the personality clash as well. Whether it happens or not is different, you know, boxing politics and all that. But Eubank Jr. is obviously the stablemate of Andy Lee. It'll be very, very interesting to see if Billy Joe Saunders defeats, you know, Andy Lee. Will that psychologically even, you know, affect Eubank Jr. thinking, you know what, this guy, we can't beat him, you know? But as a fighter, you have to think, you know, Billy Joe Saunders has that will and he has that confidence in himself and he wants to win. So for me, I'm picking Billy Joe Saunders by unanimous decision. As long as he doesn't get caught by anything big and get knocked out, or I don't think he's going to get robbed. Even though he's you know, he's on a Frank Warren card and that's his promoter, I don't think he's going to get robbed. But I think when you look at, like I said, the certain attributes, I don't think Andy Lee can deal with someone who can move and jab at the highest level. Yes, again, like I said, the you know, the caliber of opponents for Billy Joe has been domestic at best, and that's it. But I think he'll step up, and I think he'll shock us all. Very similar to Tyson Fury. I think he can beat Andy Lee. That does not mean Andy Lee is a bad fighter. The same way it doesn't mean Klitschko is a bad fighter. I don't think Andy Lee would freeze. I don't think Andy Lee is gonna, you know, lie down and take it. I think he's going to go out there and try his best. But I think Billy Joe Saunders is too young and just too good in terms of his boxing skill and his IQ. I think he knows as a boxer where his feet need to be placed to get into position. You know, his range control is brilliant as well. And Billy Joe is extremely underrated because even when you say his name, Billy Joe Saunders, you know, it doesn't sound like a boxer. The way he looks, he doesn't look like, you know, he's an elite, you know, athlete, because he's not. When you compare him and Billy Joe, when you compare Billy Joe Saunders and Chris Eubank by the look, you look at Eubank and say, oh, he's a boxer, you know. But that's not what it's about. Same way Tyson Fury Klitschko. Again, I have to go back to that comparison because that will be a template going forward for these sort of fights. I've got no issue if I'm wrong and if, you know, Saunders loses, because I know he'll be back and he will be a world champion in the middleweight division at some point. But for me, Billy Joe Saunders wins by unanimous decision. I think it's going to be either 8 rounds to 4 or 7 to 5. So either you know, 116, 112, something around that mark. That's just the way I see it. Obviously, comment below. Let us know what you think. Follow me on Twitter at SherryAbbasi93. Also, our channel Twitter is at BeRealTV, and like us on Facebook and subscribe to our channel, please. You know, we've got plenty of videos coming out. Sham's back in action as well, so please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. And hopefully we'll have a post-fight up as well straight after the fight. Thank you.
It's got to be